More than 800 women on average in the United States and 1,200 worldwide die each year from pregnancy-related complications, and that figure keeps climbing.
Yeah, that means nearly 33 women per 100,000 die because they got pregnant, and this is an issue that affects women of color disproportionately.
And here's the devastating bottom line. 80% of these maternal deaths are preventable. That's according to the CDC.
So now new research published in the Journal of American Medical Association says prioritizing new moms' mental health may be key here.
Our next guest is all too familiar with the issue. She's the author of The Pain Gap, which chronicles how racism and sexism in medical care can cost women their lives. It was inspired by her own near-death experience during labor in a U.S. hospital. Women's health researcher and rights advocate Anushay Hossain joining us now. Thanks so much for being here. So I want to start by learning more about your experience with pregnancy and childbirth and the issues that you faced getting the proper care.
Well, thank you so much for having me. And you know, when I had my traumatic birth experience almost a decade ago in the US, I was actually a feminist policy analyst on Capitol Hill, lobbying for global health legislation and completely oblivious to the fact that America's in the midst of an ongoing maternal health crisis. More women die giving birth in America than in any other rich country. In fact, it's 2 to 3 times more that America has maternal mortality rate that is larger than other high-income countries. And this report is so important, ladies, because it's showing us and pointing out that mental health plays a huge role in driving these statistics and numbers in the U.S.
I mean, to that point, and depression overall, I mean, is a huge issue for women. So then you add in the pregnancy component, both postpartum depression, prenatal depression. It can be crippling. It affects at least 1 in 7 birthing women. But, you know, to the point of your book and what you're saying, our healthcare system does not really take this into account. Why is that the case?
Well, you hit such an important point, and this is what I always try to stipulate in my work as well. This is a solvable crisis. What this report is highlighting is how many women are slipping through the cracks because they are not being screened. About 20% of women are screened for depression postpartum, even though mental health conditions such as suicide and opioid overdose impact 1 in 4 maternal deaths. But what I always try to stipulate is this is a solvable crisis. This is a preventable crisis. Women are needlessly dying in the world's richest democracy just because we are not screening accurately or often enough for mental health conditions.
I think this is such a complicated thing too, because when you're pregnant, your hormones are all over the place. You don't know what is a problem or what's quote unquote normal to feel. And I think, you know, to your point, if there was screening, if there was more education on this end, maybe as women ourselves who are experiencing it ourselves, we could see the signs, but also other people around us. So what do we need to look for in order to save the lives of the women in our lives?
I think that is such a great question. You know what? There is something we can do. What's really important is that we not only ask the women and the new mothers in our lives how they are, but we have to culturally shift how we view motherhood and giving birth in America, because it's so important to understand that postpartum is forever. It's beyond the 6-week check-in. Okay, your entire life has changed, but we're so focused on the baby, usually in the newborn, that we completely disregard the life and the health of the living, breathing, birthing person, which is the woman.
So true. And, you know, in your book, you really talk about the need for people to flip, and I have it here, it's their quote, hysteria complex on its head and use it to revolutionize women's health care. What do you mean by that? Can you share that vision for us?
Yes, because what I really call for in the book is a cultural shift that we need, where we stop viewing women and stop viewing women as over-emotional creatures, and really centering women and believing women about our bodies, about our symptoms. And when we tell you we think something is wrong, in addition to the pain gap in women's health, there's a credibility gap. Women are not believed about our bodies, period. If we've been raped, if we've been sexually harassed, if we're in pain, or we think we're bleeding to death. So let's start by shifting our culture to a place where we believe women instead of immediately trying to analyze if she's a perfect victim or the perfect patient. Why don't we start by believing women, listening to women, especially women of color?
Thank you. I was just about to say it because there's been so much reporting, so many anecdotes of women of color who they do feel something is wrong. They go to the hospital, they say they try to get the care, and it's more often than not brushed off or, you know, decided that this is actually what it's dismissed. So absolutely so important to flip it on its head.
I mean, even Serena Williams and Beyonce had issues having their voices heard. So yes, we should do a whole other segment on women of color and the healthcare in this country.
I mean, it is so important too, because you know what, being labeled a troublemaker or being someone who's trying to, I've seen so many stories of people milking the system because they're saying I need bed rest or I need something additional. We cannot be afraid, and we cannot let those voices be dimmed. It is so important.
Well, women's health researcher and rights advocate Anushay Hossain, thank you so much for your insight and your time. Very important topic, and we appreciate it.